So often I base it on having this supreme and perfectly clean home. And,
Mm.
like I think of my mom, like the home was always so clean. But I had to realize I didn't feel loved and secure because my home, because I could eat off the bathroom floors.
G'day, and welcome back to another episode of the Rise and Form podcast, the podcast that has real talk about forming your character with actually useful psychology.
We're an unlikely duo of an American psychologist and an Aussie psychologist who both love theology and the science of change.
So grab a chair and a hot cup of coffee and open your heart and mind to the conversation.
Please follow us on Instagram and Spotify or Apple. That way you can find us easy and know when we post our next episode.
Now on to the show.
Yes, okay. Let's do that. Let's say hi to each other. That sounds nice.
Yeah. Hi. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
I am doing pretty good. I'm pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty good.
Mhm.
Today's a
Okay.
good day. That's
All
said
right, I
good.
believe you just.
I said good way too many times.
What about you, Lara? How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a good, warm, sunny day here, and the kids have been outside a lot, so that's always a good day.
Yes. Where are you at again, Laura?
Nova Scotia, Canada. Very rural.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, welcome, listeners. Today, we're excited to welcome Lara D'Entremont. I do it right.
Yeah, you
Okay,
got
good.
it.
Okay. She is a wife, homeschooling mom to 3 kids, writer, striving to weave stories between faith and fiction, theology and practice, and a blogger, author, and thinker. And she has a new book out. It's out now, right, Laura?
Yeah.
Okay. It's called A Motherhood Essay on Motherhood and Anxiety. We're so happy to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
I love that title, Lara. Just that a mother held. Like, we could probably talk about that later, but that's just such a great title.
Just gonna say, I just felt like it was so relatable, especially as a mom, but also just like relatable and just like I love the story approach you take to it and just the vulnerability you take. I'm just like many of the stories I can relate to, and if I can't relate to it, I know a mom close to me who can. And so I'm just so appreciative that you talked about things in there that feel like they're just not discussed openly, or they're more just like in those, in the more private conversations. You just put beautiful words to it.
Thank you. That's so kind. And that was my heart going into this book that, at first it was just, I was talking to another young mom who is basically saying to me the exact same things I had struggled with. And then after she left, I thought, I wish I could just give her all of these stories bundled up and to be able to show her that, not to scare her further, but to be able to say, yes, it's hard and scary, but God is going to hold you the entire time. And after she left and I thought that, I'm like, oh, well, why don't I do that? So I gathered up a bunch of the stories I'd already written in the past, finessed them and worked through them and made them better or more filled out. And then I started adding more to it. And it was really a comfort to my own heart to see how God had provided in the past, and a reminder that even in the midst of the current struggles I was facing, He's with me now still.
Love it. Good reminder. We're not alone.
Yeah. You've really talked about this in your book, how motherhood's been a formative moment for you that's shaped and changed who you are. So we could talk about that, or if you want to talk about something else, feel free. But just a story of a moment that's profoundly changed you.
I think there are many moments that have profoundly changed me. But I think some of the ones have been journeying with my children through autism diagnoses has been a big thing for me, where I just felt so like I didn't know what I was doing. And I felt like I just been dropped into this huge sea, and I'm looking around thinking, what do I do now? What does this mean? And I felt so alone and scared. And it was really a time of really needing to trust in God. And I remember calling another mom friend and just breaking down and crying. And before we had the formal diagnosis, there were all these question marks. And what does this mean? What does our future look like? And I was crying and saying these questions to her, and she said, "We don't know the answers to those questions. But what we do know is God is giving you these children, and He has called you to love them and disciple them. And they are yours, but they're also His." And that was just a big turning point for me, as I was constantly looking to the future and wanting answers and grasping for answers I did not have yet and could not have yet. And just needing to say, here I am right now. This is where God has me, and this is what He's given me. Kind of like with the talents, the parable of the talents. This is what my master has given me, and now I'm going to do with it what I can.
Yeah, it's so centering what you're saying, about that, because it's sort of like, okay, what's the greater truth here? I'm a steward of their lives, and they're a gift from God, and regardless of what happens, that's your job. That's what you're there to do, isn't it? And it's so good to have that as the centering, grounding thing by which you operate in all things. And I think that's so good, isn't it, Andrea, to think about with all hard diagnoses we get, or life circumstances. That's such a good idea, isn't it, to put just God at the center.
Yes.
What's your will in all of this? Your will be done.
Yes. It's things like this where it's like, it didn't catch God off guard. I love that advice. Right. It's like, he's not like, oops. Like,
right.
He knows, and he wraps people around you. And even that advice you got from your friend of like, this is what we know. And I think that's so humbling too. It's like, we don't know everything, and we won't know everything, but we know the essential thing. And so I love that.
Yeah.
And what a great friend.
Yes.
Also,
yes.
Just whoever that is.
She's
been
friend. An amazing just anchor in my life. And she's my most honest friend I have. She will be completely bluntly honest with you whenever you need. And it's actually really helpful.
Yes.
Oh,
I love that.
Man. We got to get more of those in our lives. Like that's so good.
Yeah, you got to build up to that, but when you do, like, lean into it. We got to, like, if we've cashed that in with our friends, it's like, all right, lean into that honesty.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay, well, let me throw out something maybe a little bit more fun of what's maybe a fun or favorite way to rest in the midst of parenthood for all of us. So anyway, I'll start, and then I'll just like throw it out, and whoever grabs it first wins. But I was just gonna say I started doing this paint by numbers, and I really like it. Like, it entertains me enough. I'm not like, I can't be on my phone at the same time. I'm relaxed. I'm usually sitting outside and just doing it. And then the other day, my daughter did it with me. She had her own little like kid toddler size one. And she was like, this is so wonderful. I was like, oh, you're so cute. So that's my favorite.
That's good. That's good, Andrea. That sounds like a terrible time to me. Sorry,
I guess this isn't going on your list. But see, you don't have to do it with your kids. That's the thing. Like, I don't have to do it. She was just there, and I'm just happy she just let me do mine.
Yeah. And it's almost like that's what it is, right? Anything sometimes, oh gosh, I'm going to get real now, but separate, right? Sometimes you just need a break. And so whatever that is. So mine, I just started going to the gym again. And the only way I can get there is at 5 a.m.
Ooh.
And so I'm going at 5. I get home, have a shower, which is like the only shower of the week that I feel like I just get the shower to myself. And then have sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes before the kids get up, just to hang out, read the word, journal a little, something like that. And that's just been really restful. It's just been so good. And it's only a new thing because, I think I was drowning in parenthood and all of the stuff. So that was like all right, how am I going to find rest? And it was like, funnily enough, getting up earlier. So, which was like, not sleep, but rest. And that was, it's been really good for me.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Yeah. Did you have something in mind, Lara, in terms of rest in parenthood?
Yeah, for me, rest has often looked like writing, surprisingly. And usually I write nonfiction. And then during the postpartum with my twins, my brain just could not wrap around nonfiction. And I was struggling so much with mental health stuff and so much with just exhaustion because I had to feed them around the clock every 2 hours. It was really hard just to even function. But then I got back into when I was in like elementary school and high school, I wrote a lot of fiction. And so, like short stories and trying my hand at writing a full novel, though I never got that far. I thought, why don't I just do that? I've had this story in the back of my head for years. Why don't I try? And it'll be something fun and relaxing. And it was. And I didn't put any pressure on myself that it had to be something worthwhile, that it had to be something that could be published and be this amazing, beautiful, award-winning book. It was just something for me to do and to have fun again and to get back into writing in some form. And yeah, I've just found writing to be my way of relaxing or going for a walk and just being out in nature.
I love that. I think you hit on something of like, it's for me, like it's just for me. It doesn't need to be something that the whole world sees necessarily. Not that they won't. And I know you have put your work out there, but sometimes it's just fun just to know this is just for me and it can end here if it needs to.
Exactly. Yeah. There was like zero pressure of like it had to be perfect. I was just writing. I didn't even have a plan of how the story would unfold. It's like, I'm just going to write and see what happens.
Love it.
Yeah, I just realized, Andrea, you're the only American here.
Oh.
So, and why I thought of that is because you're Canadian, right, Lara?
Yes, yeah, Canadian.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. I didn't want to assume, but yeah. So we got some Olympic battles going on right now, but that wasn't what I was thinking about. Was how
let me see. I want to hear this train of thought. Let's see. How do we get here from?
Let's just ride this train of thought for a little minute.
I like this.
No, but what I was thinking about is how often in America, anyway, it's always about achievement, right?
Yeah.
It's always about like write a book so you can be a bestseller or something like that. So I loved what you said, Lara, about that.
Yeah.
Just how it was like just for you, and it was just a chance for you, and it ends up being a fantastic book, probably because you weren't trying to do something other than just reflect and yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so let's dive in a little bit more to your story and a little bit what's in the book, and I think I've done a fair amount of work with parents of young children, and in Australia I worked at a hospital which is for parents who are suffering with really severe postpartum issues, and I was the psychologist there with social workers and nurses. It's a wonderful organization called Nagala. And there's nothing like it here. I don't know if there is in Canada, but
maybe you can create it.
Hearing just yeah, we can talk about that. But that honestly I would love to. We just need a lot of funding. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about you wrote a little bit about your birth trauma and some of the things that you went through, particularly the reactions you were having to the event, and how you had some thoughts and reactions to your own feelings that you thought were disproportionate, and you're, I think, a psychologist or psychiatrist said to you something about that reaction is you trying to keep your children safe. It's just an innate reaction to what the woman's body will do. And so I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit about that story. And
yeah, I really felt a lot of shame around the idea that, oh my goodness, like I had a very safe birth. Everything was fine. And I thought, nobody nearly died. So therefore, how could it be considered trauma? And then seeing this reaction I was having, I thought, if anyone heard me say I'm having birth trauma, they would laugh at me or think that I'm like misusing the term, because, you know, people do that they'll hear a few symptoms in a TikTok video and say, oh yeah, I definitely have this issue. And I didn't want people to think I was doing that. And I was like, it can't be that I'm having PTSD from a simple like C-section that went really well. Like the doctors were so low key about my C-section. They were talking about their kids as they're like taking care of the C-section. Like it was so low key, but my body perceived it differently, because
Absolutely.
there were moments when like one of the baby's heart rates kept going down and down. And they told me, if this baby's heart rate goes down again, we're going to have to do an emergency C-section. And a C-section was one of those things I was most afraid of going into a twin pregnancy. And so my body took all of that information and it did form a trauma response. And when I finally was truthful with my psychiatrist, she very kindly explained, like, it's not about the trauma, but it's about how your body perceives it. It's about the way your body stores the information, and your body in that moment decided my life and my children's lives were at risk. And therefore those instincts kicked in and said, we need to warn this body that don't ever go back to this place, because that's where you guys almost died. So we can never go back. So keep looking at it. Keep looking at it through flashbacks. So you remember, see, that's the place where you almost died. Don't go back. And it was really helpful and comforting as she explained it that way. She's like, it's just the same thing as, you know, you're walking along a path and you see a stick and you jump because you think it's a snake. And it's not that like, oh my goodness, you're such a wimpy person and how can you be scared of a stick? It's that, no, your body is saying, I know snakes can be dangerous. I need to protect myself in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's helpful. I guess I think I want to ask, why is it helpful? What was helpful about having that understanding of why your body was doing that? What helped you in that moment? Was it just to relieve the shame?
Yeah, it relieved the shame and also helped me see, okay, what I'm experiencing is normal. You know, not that it's good that it's happening, but at least to know I'm not going crazy. I'm
I'm not
not
broken.
I'm not broken beyond fixing, and that this is normal, and that many women have gone through it and also seen the other side of it.
Yeah, the power of not being alone in these moments, and for someone to say like, yeah, we can understand this, you know, this makes sense, and your body is doing what it's supposed to do. It's just, and it is scary, and it is, you know, like, I mean, just even physically, if you think about that, like, and the body remembers, you know, and so that is powerful. That is powerful.
Yeah, and such a highly sensitized moment too, isn't it? Like you literally giving birth, like that moment, everything must be primed towards this needs to be healthy, this needs to be well, nothing can go wrong, and one thing goes wrong and the whole body activates, and so I hear you. It makes a lot of sense, and how helpful that was just to hear that it's normal and your body's just doing what it's meant to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think as you said, you know, that the psychiatrist, I think this was in the book, you said the psychiatrist was like, and when your body learns that it's safe, it will recover, you know? So the body just has to learn that it's safe. Like, we got to remember we're all parts. And I think it could be so easy. And I think shame comes in when we feel like, gosh, this doesn't make sense cognitively. Like, in my brain, this doesn't make sense. Like, why am I feeling this? And it's like, yeah, because you're more than a brain, you know? And so,
yes. We're not brains on a stick.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's great. What an image that just gave
I know.
me. That's great. Yeah. Love it.
Well, I think this is one example of one of the kind of painful, scary parental motherhood experiences that you've had. And there's a part in the book where you talked about how your husband, I believe, was saying, like, you know, just encouraging you both, like, let's just believe God is good No matter what, let's believe God is good. And you were honest. You were like, it's hard to believe, especially going through miscarriages, postpartum depression, supporting a child who was diagnosed with autism, a C-section, all of these things. Like, you really had the gamut of experience. So I guess my question is, like, how did you arrive to this place of growing to believe God is good?
It was constantly reminding myself of the truth. Um, and one of the songs that I sang it all the time. I sang it as I paced the floor at night with a cranky baby. I sang it as I hoped that they would go to sleep. I sang it to myself through tears. I sang it in church, and it was, He will hold me fast. And I just sang it over and over to myself and reminding myself of those truths of He will hold me fast no matter what happens, no matter what comes. He's held me fast so far, and it's been hard, but He will continue to hold me fast. And it has even just reminding myself as I held my baby, how much more that God loves me, that I loved those babies in that moment, how much more He loved me and those children, and how much tighter and more secure He held us than even I held them. And just continuing to grab on to anything I could to remind me of the truth.
I love that, constantly reminding ourselves of that. And that's why He's good. He's good because He's with us. He's present, and He loves us, not because He takes away these painful experiences. He's good because He's just alongside us in it all and holding us fast. I love that.
Yeah, we need to know that we're held. We need to know that we're contained by Him. And I think, just as parents, we do so much looking after others, don't we? So much holding, holding their feelings, holding their snacks, holding their things, holding their scooter and their skateboard and their bike all at the same time down the hill because they didn't ride them. And just to have, in those moments, it can be really hard, can't it? You can feel really lonely. And so it's, I hear you about how you were pressing into that, Lara, really pressing into that because you needed to daily or maybe even moment by moment be reminded of that. Yeah. It's really impactful. Well, let's talk about this. This is really interesting. You've really talked about how we can find our identity and justification in what we do as parents, how easy it is to find it. And I love questions about identity, of what we find, where we find our identity. And one of the things you've talked about is what you've learned about your identity from being a mother.
Yeah, I think it was so easy to try to put my identity of who I was into motherhood, especially when it seemed like I had given up so much to be a mom. I had given up, education. I had given up, having the most beautiful home ever. I had given up a job to be a mom. And I have to put my identity into something. I can shove it all in this container of motherhood. And that also was unsatisfying. And it wasn't enough. And it was always lacking. And I realized I needed to find my identity in something more lasting, something more founding and grounding. And it was Christ, as He calls us to find your identity in Him, that we are hidden in Him, that we are His, that we belong to Him, and we are called to live. I'm not just a mother, but He's also made me a daughter and a daughter of Him. He's made me so many other things, and He's called me to live out all aspects of what I am, and finding my identity in that, rather than trying to find it in being the best mom or those perfect mom, those crunchy mom, or whatever you want to be, the best homesteading or homeschooling, it's going to be lacking, and they will never be enough.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's kind of the it's the, what am I trying to say, like the catch or the the negative side to putting our identity in these imperfect things. As parents, we're imperfect, as all this, and it just shatters. But the one thing that won't shatter is putting our identity in Christ, that he's perfect. And so it's just so much easier when we can do that and get to that place. We have a visitor.
We got a little visitor come in.
Hi. You have chocolate all over your face. You go watch Thomas. Shut the door behind you.
Oh, Thomas.
Go watch Thomas.
That's a win.
Yes.
And I'll get you something when we come out.
Oh, they're
more
doing
food.
so good.
I know they are.
Snacks and Thomas. That's what they need. Snacks.
They're just I just need to see mommy for a second. It's just like, oh, you're here. Oh, I need a little love. Okay, now I can go back. It's how we are.
Yeah. I think last week, was it, Andrea, or maybe the week before, my kid was having just the biggest meltdown during the podcast.
Oh, no.
And I could hear, and it was really hard to stay focused. Mum was home, but I was like, I am struggling so much right now. Yeah.
It's hard
So,
when you hear that.
yeah.
And I've had a week like
so
that
hard.
too, where Carrie wasn't home. My husband, he wasn't home. And Tiffany's crying in her room. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm muting myself. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then thankfully, he came maybe 5-10 minutes into her crying. And I was like, oh, good. Whew. So,
Yes.
Yes. We're just trying to do it, right?
Yep.
We're just trying to do life and keep going.
Juggling all the things.
But that's good, actually, Lara, just thinking about identity, because it's if our identity was in this moment and we were podcasters and we were trying to be someone, we would feel so different about a moment like that, right? We would think oh no, all is lost, the sky's falling in, and it's like that. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, right?
Exactly.
That's good.
Yeah, and it's see?
Good. Yeah, you get some snaps. Almost said amen.
Sometimes the thoughts work. Sometimes.
You're on it.
No, but I'm challenged by it at the same time, though, because a mother, a father are huge identities to have.
Yes.
But I love that you're incorporating in that what's bigger than that. That's good, but what's better? That's a good thing. How important is motherhood?
Yeah.
But there's something even better. And I love that you thought of yourself as a daughter, because I feel like I forget that I'm a son as well, of God, and not just a follower of Jesus, but he's my daddy. And
even though we're grown up,
Yeah.
we forget.
Yeah.
We think, I'm grown up now. I'm just a follower of Jesus. We forget that I'm also his child. And one of my favorite pictures of being a child of God is I believe it was from John Calvin. He talked about, there's a difference between a servant and a son in the picture of a king. The servant comes and they're expected to have the very best. They've done the best work. They're kind of shaking as they bring their work to the king. Here it is. Is it good enough? Is it, hoping it's just perfect. But then the son comes and he brings something that's far from perfect. Maybe it's even a little child coming with something they've tried to draw and it's just scribbled. And you're not even sure what it is. But he loves it.
Yeah.
It came from his son. Right. And that is a picture that's just always stuck in my head, and it's one I've clung to in the midst of being somebody who struggles with perfectionism and all the angst that comes with that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I was just reading this book, Abide in Christ, and it talks about the word yield, and yield just stood out to me so much of we just have to sometimes yield to that. We can't force that. We can't do anything except to yield to the fact that we're sons and daughters of him. And it's giving in, it's surrendering to the fact that he loves you. Sorry, nothing you can do about it, even in all your mess, and no matter how bad that drawing is, he loves it, and that's awesome.
No matter what you think about it.
Also, there's a passage that talks about, I think it's one of the Psalms, that it says, he says, I am like a weaned child with its mother, as I am with God. And I always wondered, what does that mean? As I looked it up in commentaries, I saw that, you think of a child who isn't weaned, whenever they are around their mother, they smell the breast milk or they smell the smell of their mother and they think, I need to eat. And so then they're immediately clawing and whining and fussing and thinking, I need a bottle or I need to breastfeed, whatever it might be. But the weaned child is able just to sit calmly with the mother because they don't need to claw and try to hurry and get it because they have other food. Their stomach's probably full with a bunch of snacks or whatever it might be. And that's another picture that's really stuck with me of thinking, yeah, like I don't need to worry about if I have everything I need because I've learned now, I'm a weaned child. I've learned now that I am safe and secure with my parent and they will take care of me.
Yeah, that's the word, security. As you were describing that, I was like, that's just sitting calmly and just being with the parent and just trusting that your needs will be met. That's like the picture of security. And it's so funny as you were sharing that. I have a 5-year-old, so she doesn't need to be weaned from breast milk, but she like we've been really this past weekend really busy, and my husband and I, and not able to give her the same amount of attention that we have in the past. And I could just feel this like almost like, you know, that clawing kind of feeling. And that has really taken a toll on me this week, honestly. Like I've just been like just so like just tapped and like, look, I can't give that. I can't give you all that what I gave you then. Like there's got to be this weaning process. And so with you bringing that up, it's like, yes, like there's pains in the weaning that happens, but that makes them stronger. And the beauty of like there can be this wean, you know, child, you know, we can wean from so many different things. So I really appreciate you, you know, bringing that scripture in. I think that's helpful. Encouraging. Yeah. I wonder, Abe, Lara, you had talked like a little bit about perfectionism really briefly, and I was wondering, Abe, if you wanted to just jump into that question.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Where is it?
It's the form question.
Oh, is it the first? Yeah, the top. Sorry, it's on the other side of my page. Yeah, let's do that. I'm like, it's not here.
I don't have it.
Speaking of perfectionism, it's like, this is not a perfect process. We have been, Lara, we've been like, I think both of us have been like, it's probably the same for you. It's just summer. Everyone's busy. We got so much going on. And so we were talking before this about how we've just like, we usually like have a lot more time to catch up, Andrea and I, as well, before the podcast. And so we're all just kind of, we're just chilling. We're just chilling today.
I love it. I'm glad.
Yeah. So, I mean, sort of talking about shame and back to perfectionism and impressions, and the impact of comparison of how your mother was a superwoman and could do it all. And you wrote, I simply had to work harder, grit my teeth and press on. And then later you said, fine, I'll break my back, making sure my home is sparkling. And when I read that, I thought, oh, I've heard this so much, and I've felt this too. But as you know, a therapist, I hear that idea a lot. I see my friends doing that. You know, just they're having us over or something, and I do this too. And it's just like, my goodness, like it's like the Queen's coming over or something. You know. The king now, but yeah, you know, and how you connect that with like, we're good parents, or you're a horrible mother, you're a wonderful mother, in how clean your house is and that sort of thing. And so you sort of talked about something countercultural in your book, that you're not a good mother because you're trying your best. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, that shook me a little bit. That doesn't make you a good mother, trying your best. And so can we just unpack that?
Yeah, I think because being a good mother, first, it's that I'm loving my kids. You know, being a good mother wasn't based, for so often I based it on having this supreme and perfectly clean home. And, you know, like I think of my mom, like the home was always so clean. But I had to realize I didn't feel loved and secure because because I could eat off the bathroom floors. Like that's not what made me feel loved and cared for. It was that she was there, that she listened to my struggles, that she gave me advice, that she provided for me, that she was there for me as much as she could. She still worked a full-time job, but she sought to be there however she could. She came to the performances. She took me to the lessons. She did everything she could to show me she loved me. And that even keeping the house clean was a form of her showing her love, but that's not how I knew I was loved. It was
Mm.
all of the things and all of the care. When the house was messy because she was sick or because she was working later hours, I didn't think I was less loved. I knew I was loved
Mm.
because I was hers and because she had proven it over and over and over again through the years. And just needing to realize that myself, that I'm loved and my
Mhm.
kids know they're loved, not because they see me running around with the broom every time there's a spot of crumbs on the floor, but because I'm there for them and come to their cries and I tell them I love them and I feed them each day, you know? It's not because I'm doing, trying my hardest to be this superwoman, but because I'm there with them and I'm holding them just as Christ does for me.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I love that. I think that that idea of like just like that is true love there, and it's grounding, and then I think too, like, if we are doing all the things, like, we don't know what had to happen for all those things, for our parents to have done all those things. Like, we don't know the behind the scenes because we were the kids at that
Yes.
point, and so it is hard. We have half the story, and we can feel that pressure, but it's like, look, what was the basic thing? I felt loved, like, so let me just do that.
And Lara, how did you kind of get that mindset going and almost start practicing? Because I'm guessing there's always something to do. And when someone's coming over, or when, there's always pressure you could clean more, couldn't you? You could fold more laundry. And so I'm wondering just how you found, like, strike that balance, or what you had to start practicing so that you could really lean into that.
Part of it was simply having to admit to myself and say, I can't. And part of that was having newborn twins. Like, I could not do it. I could not keep up with the laundry and have an empty laundry basket at the end of each day. I simply couldn't. I could not sweep the floors or vacuum the floors every single day anymore. And just having to acknowledge I literally can't. And I need to be okay with it. And it was almost like exposure therapy in real life, that as I'm going around and looking at my home and seeing, yep, I am stepping in crumbs right now. Yes, that is formula on the floor right now. Yes, there are a bunch of bottles that need to be cleaned. You know what? I have bottles that we can use right now, and I can just quickly wash them out if I need to. It's okay. And the crumbs aren't
Yeah.
going to kill anybody. It's okay that we're digging our laundry out of the clean laundry basket and it's not hung up or folded. It's okay. Okay that I had to chuck the pajamas in the drawer instead of neatly pile them and organize them according to season.
Oh,
And
Maria Kondo can just rack off.
exactly, like, it was really truly exposure therapy of simply having to realize I can't keep up, and it's
Yeah.
hurting my body. I have to slow down. I can't do it. And also, if realizing too, if being a good mom means that the laundry basket isn't empty at the end of the day, it's better that I was there and I loved my children and I attended to them than I broke my back trying to get that laundry done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good reminder. It's reminding me of this story growing up. So there was a point where my dad had retired from one job and was like in transition into another job, and it was Christmas and they didn't have enough money to like buy us gifts, and he was like retelling this story as I was an adult, and I was thinking back, I was like, I don't remember ever having a Christmas where I was just like, dang, man, we were just poor. We
Aww.
didn't have any money. I was like, I never remember that. I just remember
Wow.
being loved, and like, that's just like that mindset of like just remembering, this is what is remembered, is the love that you give your kids. Like, I had no clue. He could have never told me. I would have never known,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And with all the sort of like focus, it's such a cult at the moment, isn't it? Like parenthood. Like, there's just so much about it all over social media, and
Yes.
the library's full of it. And
Mm-hmm.
And I know why, right? It was a reaction to the past generations. We've got so much good research on it and everything, but it seems like the focus has been like now, like just be a great parent, you know, and then we can get lost in the doing of that, like do parenthood. And it's funny because, you know, I sometimes say this to clients that you don't say that you're wifing or you don't say that you're husbanding, but you say that you're parenting.
Mm.
You know,
Right.
the you know, and it's like a like a thing that you do, rather than like, no, you're just in a relationship, like with your child. It's, you know, you do think about, okay, what kind of husband am I being today? What kind of wife? What kind of person? What kind of boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is. But yeah, the focus mostly in relationship and in family should be on just, the relationship. Like what's the, and so I really appreciate that, Lara. And I think it's just so hard. Like I'm a little challenged with it. And it's mainly, I'm challenged for everyone that's in my mind that I hold in therapy about, I know they're just, you know, trying to get that laundry done, you know, and while their kids feeling, you know, like grateful maybe that their house is clean, but they want
Right.
a present mum,
Right.
you know, and
Right.
That came out a lot too, I found in summertime because, you know, here, like winter, it feels like lasts forever here. And the moment that sun comes out, I'm like, I just want to be outside. And having to realize, because my kids are still at the age that I can't just send them out the door. I have to go with them. And
Mm-hmm.
so
mm,
realizing that I care more about side with them and having that fun while we can in this, like in the warm weather, than I do about making sure that the kitchen, every single appliance was scrubbed this week. And that again was one of those things that was really hard to acknowledge and to be okay with. But I think you hit it really well, of saying that it's about being in relationship than about the doing sometimes.
Yeah.
actually a Canadian intervention, I'm pretty sure. It's called Watch, Wait, Wonder.
Oh,
And it's just about literally doing that. A 15-minute, I think, protocol where you just watch your kids, sit on your hands, do nothing, and just wait. And just wonder about them, wonder about what's on their mind, what their intentions are, what toy they're picking up. And it just, I do that whenever I'm feeling that feeling of like, I'm stressed, there's so much to do. Maybe I need to like connect with my kid. I really need to connect with my kid because I've only got 15 minutes to connect with my kid
right.
before I got to go do the next thing, right? All of that stuff comes up. And I'm like, I'm just gonna try and be present. And so I just, that WWW comes to mind. And I'm like, I'm just gonna watch, wait, wonder for a little bit. And it's good what happened, you know, you just kind of feel present. And, you know, and the first time I started trying that, the first like 60 seconds felt like an hour. It was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. So like, if you do try that, you know, listeners, if you try that, expect it to be a little bit hard. You know, it's not easy to sit for 5 minutes doing nothing, just wondering about what your kids are doing.
Oh my gosh,
15 minutes can feel like a long time when you're doing nothing.
right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I love that. That's so practical and just like a good exercise because I think again as parents it's all these doing things and like can we just like take in our kids and I imagine that there's complications with that, especially with younger kids where it's like, okay, like how long can that amount of time last before they're like on our laps or like, but I'm sure you could still do it there. Like, so I like that intervention. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. I'm wondering, maybe I'll throw out one more question. Lara, what maybe do you wish you knew or wish you had done during the early phases of motherhood that maybe you would want other mothers to know, other parents to know? It may not be specific to mothers, but
I wish that I had reached out for help sooner. And like, I mean, help in the broadest sense of, I wish I had reached out for mental health help sooner instead of hiding in fear, thinking that I'm this monster or this crazy person who can't be helped, and people are going to just put me like lock me up in a straitjacket and think that I'm not fit anymore. And I wish I had gotten help from in a medical sense and that like in the mental health realm. And I also wish I had been honest sooner about I need help. I tell a story in the book about, you know, one time I'm trying to gather all the kids and get them ready to go outside. And I mutter to myself thinking, you know, when God gives a woman twins, he should also give her extra arms. Like, this is impossible. And realizing the irony in that, that God's given, he literally in the Bible
Mm.
calls the church the arms and hands of Christ.
Mm.
And he has
Mm.
given me those extra arms in my church
Mm.
family, in my community. And all I needed to do was reach out and say, I'm struggling. This is
Yes.
hard. And they would
Yes.
have come around me and just loved me and my family. And that's all I had to do. And I wish I had done it sooner.
I love that. And I love that you brought that in of like other people, you know, especially Christians. Like, this is a part of who we are and what God wants us to be for each other. You know, he says, love one another, love our Christian brothers and sisters, and show that, and just how important that is to ask for it. But then on the other side, I think to be that, to be attentive and attuned and willing to provide support to the mothers and the fathers in any way. You had a few little moments in your story where you talked about kind words that people said, or there was one lady, I think she gave like one of the kids, you know, paper and a pen and like occupied them for a moment, and just little breaks. And if we can just pause, like when we're at church, if we can pause and like just look around and see like, how can I just say a kind word, or just give a smile or a pat, or like, you got this, or whatever, like how encouraging that is for parents.
Well, even a story from very recently was I was at church and it was just me and the kids, and my pastor, he knows our story. He knows about the two who struggle with the autism, and we was sitting there and my kids were just freaking out, and I'm trying to contain them, trying to like get through this service. And he stopped mid sermon and said, can somebody please help our sister here? Somebody please help her. And when nobody moved in the first few seconds, he said, okay, I will. He got down off the stage, came down, settled my children, and then went back to preaching. And I will never, ever forget that moment. And I thought to myself, this is what the early church looked like. This is what it looked like. It wasn't about being on a stage and everything being flashy and perfect and a great performance to entertain everybody. It was about being at the same level with each other, loving each other, and being there however we can. And he truly embodied Christ in that moment. And I will never forget what he did for us in that time.
Wow.
Beautiful.
So many things come to mind as you say that. Like, I hear leaves the 99 like in my head as you say that, right? Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Lara. That was an incredible story. And just for meeting with us and for your honesty and bravery in writing that book. It was just so vulnerable and real. And yeah, I think Andrea and we loved what you wrote, and we really do recommend that people go and get a Mother Held Essays on Motherhood and Anxiety. It's a wonderful read and it'll really help a lot of people. So thank you for your work and your heart in that way.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm so grateful that I could be here and talk about the book. It really was a labor of love in many ways. And my heart was simply to not to gain people's pity or to be like, oh my goodness, look how hard motherhood was for me, but instead to show people that they're not alone. And I realized, you know, as people have reached out and said, I felt like I was reading my own story, how many women truly, how much other women have gone through these same struggles.
Yes, absolutely. Not alone. And I have to commend you. You have done beautifully with all the kids. I mean, like, this is just modeled in action. Like, you just, like, commend you for real. Like,
thanks for listening to the show, everyone. Make sure you like us on Instagram. No, you don't like us on Instagram. Everyone, you know what we're
you
saying.
should like us on Instagram and follow us.
Follow us on Instagram.
You should go above and beyond.